Hi, I'm John Vorperian, and this is Beyond the Game. Hey, it's a wonderful thing to have back into the studio Gaylon White. You may recall he was here to talk about the Bilko Athletic Club. We left off with so much more to give you, and here's that so much more. So tonight, sit back, get ready to hear about the Bilko Athletic Club, and I promise you, even though we're here in the middle of World Cups, we're not going to be talking at all about soccer. So without further ado, Gaylon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, John.
You know, when you talk about Los Angeles, I think it's fair to say, no question about it, the 1950s, Southern Cal, Los Angeles is the baseball capital. Isn't that a fair assessment to say?
It was certainly when the Dodgers moved there in 1958 from Brooklyn. But the connection between Los Angeles and New York was there long before the Dodgers moved to Brooklyn, moved to LA, and the Giants moved to San Francisco.
Yeah. Now, for those viewers that don't know Steve Bilko, I just want to share with them a image of Bilko, just so you know. Perhaps, in fact, you may be in this picture. Is that fair to say?
I could have been.
You could have been. You would have been down here as an autograph seeker.
About that age, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So, is Steve Bilko the home run slugger for the Los Angeles
Paul
team?
Bunyan of the Bushes was one of his nicknames. Sultan of Swat of the Grocery League was another. A minor league home run legend. In the majors, he had some success, but certainly not what he had in the minors. And the picture you showed there was Steve Bilko signing autographs for LA fans after he returned to LA with the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1958.
Yeah. Now, folks are focused on this Angel team. They want Major League Baseball, and I'm donned in this uni, which leads us back to, well, gee, let's see if I can do the arithmetic right, but 1954 or so? Or can you help us out with the Fall Classic and Los Angeles connection there?
Well, most Giant fans don't need reminding that the Giants swept the Indians in the 1954 World Series. And that was an upset of sorts. The Indians had won 111 games. They had a tremendous pitching staff, several Hall of Famers like Bob Lemon, an early win, Bob Feller. Mm-hmm. The Giants swept them 4 in a row, and what most people remember about that World Series was Willie Mays, the catch, over the shoulders, and Dusty Rhodes' pinch home run in one of the games that was a pivotal point in the series. Well, the Tribe and the Giants met in a 2-game rematch in March 1955. The outcome was the same. The Giants won 2 in a row. In the first game, Willie Mays hit 3 straight home runs at LA's Wrigley Field. And in the second game, the Giants beat the Indians on Dusty Rhodes' pinch hit home run and another spectacular catch by Willie Mays. So it was an instant replay, you might say, a few months later.
Oh. Well, in your book, I know you have some images of the stadium in which the Angels played in. Can you tell us some of the strengths and weaknesses, let's say, of the stadium itself, Wrigley?
Well, Wrigley Field in Los Angeles actually was the first Wrigley Field. The Wrigley Field in Chicago was actually Cubs Park when it was built in 1914. They changed the name in 1926. This year is the centennial year for Wrigley Field in Chicago. But the Wrigley Field in LA really was, William Wrigley wanted to build another Wrigley Field, but improve on the one that had been built in Chicago in 1914. The seating capacity wasn't as great. So, for example, in the one of the games between the Giants and the Indians, 25,000 fans were there. They were even on the field, and there were another 2,000 couldn't get in. So it didn't have the capacity of the one in Chicago, but the dimensions were pretty much the same. There were some differences in the power alleys. That led a lot of folks to think that if Major League Baseball ever came to LA and they played in Wrigley Field, that all the home run records would fall.
And that would be a good thing because Americans love offense.
They do, and the home run record did fall in 1961, the only season when Wrigley Field was in the major leagues. However, the Yankees, in their 9 games at Wrigley Field in LA, lost 6 of them. The M&M boys only hit 2 home runs each. 2 of Maris's 61 came at Wrigley Field. 2 of Mantle's 1954 came at Wrigley Field. Little Albie Pearson, 5'5", 140 pounds, hit 3 home runs in the 9 games. So Albie Pearson out-homered the M&M boys in LA's Wrigley Field.
Well, do you have any theories or formulas as to why the Bronx Bombers couldn't go yard in Wrigley Field in LA? One
of the theories, and it pertains more to Mickey Mantle than Roger Maris, but one of the theories is that Johnny Grant, who was a popular DJ in the LA area with contacts with a lot of beautiful women, kind of hooked Mickey up with some of the women, at least for some parties and maybe some nightlife. So it's believed that Mickey didn't get in all that early. I don't think anybody was checking curfew, but that can explain his .207 batting average in the 9 games at Wrigley Field.
You know, Gaylon, you know what I love about the Bilko Athletic Club? You have a lot of text, but sometimes a picture's worth 1,000 words. You just mentioned it. People thought that once the national Brooklyn Dodgers came out west, it would be at Wrigley Field. And can you tell us a little bit about this image?
This picture actually was taken in 1957, right after Walter O'Malley announced they was going to move the Dodgers from Brooklyn to L.A. So early speculation was that O'Malley would move into the only real ballpark in the Los Angeles area, and that was Wrigley Field. Of course, he did not. He moved into the Los Angeles Coliseum, which, of course, is best known for the 1932 Olympics and also for college and pro football games. And at the Coliseum, they broke all sorts of attendance records, and later on in 1960 moved into Dodger Stadium. But Wrigley Field didn't become the Major League ballpark that everybody thought it might be until the Angels, the Major League Angels, moved in there in 1961.
I know you did a number of oral interviews with players, and did any of them weigh in with regards to playing baseball in LA Coliseum, because it was very peculiar configuration? Did anybody say to you, geez, if I could have played there and be able to utilize that, what was it, right field was 200 feet or something?
Left field was 250 feet, and because it was so short, they created what they called the Chinese wall. It was a 40-foot net that they hooked up there in left field. Right field was like a Grand Canyon or Death Valley. Duke Snider hit some of the longest fly balls you'll ever see that weren't home runs that went to right field or right center. So it had for right-handed hitters, certainly left field was a home run target. Although, what's interesting, the player who probably had the most success with home runs at the Coliseum was Wally Moon, a left-handed hitter who perfected what became known as the moonshots. And he was able to get under the ball and lift it over that left field screen. Steve Bilko played with the Dodgers in 1958, and he hit one of those moonshots, and he hit it so high over the left field screen that John Roseborough, who was on base, tripped as he rounded second base watching the ball go over. Bilko liked to say that he thanked Roseborough afterwards because it allowed him more time to enjoy the cheers of the crowd.
I really am taken back by this, but you have an artist's rendition of what Wrigley Field could have, should have looked like when and if Major League Baseball had embraced this as the venue.
Yes, this is the artist's rendition of what Wrigley Field was to look like if they had followed the vision of Bill Veeck, who had been hired by Phil Wrigley to come up with some drawings of a revamped Wrigley Field. You see the clock tower there would have been maintained, and then they would have enclosed the rest of the stadium. The capacity would have been about 55,000 seats. Bill Veeck wanted it to be the most modern ballpark of its time. So this drawing was done in 1954. So that's about the time that the Giants and the Indians were to meet the following spring. There was a groundswell of public opinion to bring Major League Baseball to the West Coast. Everybody felt that Los Angeles certainly was ready, and San Francisco probably as well. The other Coast League cities probably were not ready yet, but certainly LA and San Francisco, and Bill Veeck obviously was one of those people who championed baseball on the West Coast.
Is that because Veck had a influence? Is this another reason that just for spite we're not going to accept it? Would be the baseball's establishment reaction to?
Well, Veck's involvement in this vision, this sketch, was controversial. People did not feel he did not take him really seriously, even though Phil Wrigley did. Veck had wanted to move the St. Louis Browns out to L.A. previously. And in fact, before Bill Veck, there was an owner of the St. Louis Browns who wanted to move out. This is before World War II. So Bill Veck had always had an interest in L.A. He felt that Major League Baseball ought to be in L.A. The interesting thing is that when it did move to L.A., when Major League Baseball did come to L.A. in 1961, Bill Veck opposed the expansion at that time, because behind that was Del Webb and Dan Topping, owners of the Yankees. And of course, he had a long-standing battle with the Yankees.
Wow. Speaking of American League clubs, you have an image here of Bilko, and with not a Yankee, but another American League foe of the Bronx Bombers. Can you tell us a little bit about
that? Is Dick Stuart with Steve Bilko. And Dick Stuart, of course, early on was with the Pittsburgh Pirates, but he also played several years with the Boston Red Sox. In his Major League career, he hit 228 home runs, which is more than what Bilko hit. Bilko hit 76. But in the Coast League in '57, Dick Stuart promised that he guaranteed he would lead the league in home runs. He hit 6, struck out 32 times before being demoted to Class AA, Atlanta, in the Southern Association. So Bilko, when this picture was taken, Bilko was asked about whether or not Stuart would lead the league in home runs, and he said, "No, but I think he'll lead the league in strikeouts."
Your website, the Bilko Athletic Club.com, what sort of emails or hits are you getting, or feedback you're receiving from baseball fans?
I'm getting good feedback. I'm using the website really to tell a lot of the stories we're talking about here. In writing any book, there's a lot of material that winds up on the cutting room floor. Not because they're not good stories, you just don't have room for it. Also, there were a number of photographs we couldn't get into the book. So I'm using the website to tell the many stories that aren't in the book, and also to amplify some of those stories where in the book I couldn't go into some of the detail. So for example, the Dick Stuart and Steve Bilko connection only had a couple paragraphs in the book. But online I can go into a lot more detail, and we'll be talking in future stories, posting one about Dick Stuart and the wrestler Gorgeous George. Because Dick Stuart was playing pool with Gorgeous George one day and made a comment that Gorgeous George did not like about his hair. Gorgeous George's initials were GG. And so GG didn't take kindly what Dick Stuart had to say about his blonde Goldilocks, and he started to chase him around the pool table. And so that story will be in the book, as well as a few other Dick Stuart stories. He was not short on confidence in his abilities.
Speaking of abilities, there's another player here. I noticed, Los Angeles Angels, and has the ability, but you're telling me that the Boston Red Sox passed on this athlete?
This is Lorenzo Piper Davis, a great athlete, played for the Harlem Globetrotters, also an outstanding baseball player, was the manager when Willie Mays broke in with the Birmingham Black Barons in 1948. In fact, Willie Mays refers to Piper Davis as his second father. An outstanding ball player. The Boston Red Sox signed him to play for Scranton, its Class A affiliate in the Eastern League, in 1950. The comment was made by then general manager Joe Cronin that if Davis did well at Scranton, they would bring him to the majors, making him the first African American to play for the Red Sox. Piper Davis was leading Scranton in batting average, home runs, and RBIs when he was informed by the Red Sox he was being released. And when he asked why, they said economical conditions. Piper described that event as the worst in his baseball career. It was the lowest moment. But befitting Piper, he went out to the Coast League, went to play for the Oakland Oaks, started his career there in 1951, played for Oakland several years, then went on to Los Angeles. And he influenced a number of outstanding ball players, including Pumpsie Green. Pumpsie Green was the first African-American to play for the Boston Red Sox. And ironically, Pumpsie grew up in the Oakland area, saw Piper Davis play for the Oakland Oaks, and was influenced by Piper and also helped by Piper when he eventually did break in with the Red Sox.
Yeah, there was no such thing as a Red Sox curse, Gaylon. It was just plain stupidity and not seeing talent. But superstition, can you tell us a little bit about, did any Los Angeles Angel or Bilko himself have any superstitions in the clubhouse or on the field?
Yes, I don't write about it in the book, but one of the superstitions I did come across, he had a candy bar that he would keep in the inside the bill of his cap, inside his cap, right around the forehead. I read someplace what the name of the candy bar was. Not Baby Ruth, but it was a candy bar.
Wow. We're only a short distance from the Sandlot in the Bronx, and I guess that might be a lead-in to this image.
This is Jim Bolger, who was an outfielder for the 56 Angels. And the distinction that Jim Bolger had over most of his teammates with the 56 Angels, as well as a lot of other players in baseball, is he loved to hit against Ryan Duran.
Good Yankee pitcher.
Now, most players did not like to hit against Ryan Duran for several reasons. The Coke bottle glasses, the fact that he often drank a little too much, and so the combination of the poor eyesight and probably drinking too much, not too many hitters wanted to dig in against Ryan Duran. But Jim Bolger had hit against Ryan Duran in the lower minors, and then in 1956, when Duran pitched for the Vancouver Mounties and Jim Bolger was playing for the 56 Angels, Bolger hit close to 400 off of Ryan Duran. Now, by comparison, Steve Bilko did not like to hit against Ryan Duran. He did hit a couple home runs off of him in 56, but by and large, Ryan Duran got the upper hand and thought he was a fairly easy strikeout.
You know, I am going to digress for a moment because Bilko is known as a home run hitter, slugger. Were there any instances, any time in his playing career where he went to the plate and may have bunted or may have just simply tried to do something other than go yard?
I didn't come across any bunting incidents, but Bilko did steal a number of bases. It was a delayed steal, but and which was a little unusual for a man his size. He was 6'1", weighed anywhere between 230 and 270 pounds. His typical playing weight was around 254, but he did steal bases from time to time. In 1956, the interesting thing, he won the Triple Crown that year, just as Mickey Mantle did for the Yankees. Bilko out-tripled Mantle, 6-4.
The most exciting 20 seconds in baseball, the triple. My goodness. Then let me ask you this, just to clarify on the Los Angeles Angels, when we think of this team, are we thinking of a team that's playing American League ball per se, you know, get men on base, go for the 3-run homer? Or are we talking about a team that more is closer to the National League style of play of speed and defense?
Probably would be American League. Joe Gordon, who was manager of the San Francisco Seals in 1956 and of course had managed in the big leagues, he said of the 56 Angels, if they had a couple more frontline pitchers, he felt they could have finished second to the New York Yankees in the American League that year. So it was a power-laden ball club. It was sort of Bronx Bombers West, you might say. They had 6 fellas who hit 20 or more home runs. Bilko, of course, leading the way with 55. Jim Bolger, who we saw earlier, hit 28 home runs. And Bolger hit 147 RBIs that year, batting in the number 7 spot. So it was a Yankee-type slugging team that took advantage of its ballpark, Wrigley Field, which was a home run hitter's haven. Bilko, in fact, was known as the home pro because he hit so many home runs there.
We're down to the last photo, and Piper Davis, Birmingham Black Barons, a Negro League squad, and then I see we have another graduate from the Negro Leagues, but he got to the show, and he's chatting with a fellow teammate. Who are these guys?
Okay.
Or actually, okay, I've set you up, Gaylon, for the
all right.
for a nice, easy softball.
On the right is Dave Hillman, who was a 21-game winner for the 56 Angels. Went on to have several decent years with the Cubs, although his one-loss record wouldn't indicate it. But he had a fine ERA for some bad teams. Obviously, that's Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub on the left. Ernie Banks broke in with the Cubs, broke the color barrier in 1954, along with Gene Baker, who came from the Los Angeles Angels. Baker actually was the more experienced shortstop of the two. They were both shortstops. But because he was more experienced, he agreed to move over to second base and let Ernie play shortstop. The interesting thing about Ernie, of course, he had 514 home runs over his career. He had a lot of them there at Wrigley Field in Chicago. One of the things that Steve Bilko told me, that one of his regrets was that he didn't get to start every day a full season in Chicago's Wrigley Field, because based on his success in Los Angeles, hitting 148 home runs in his 3 years with the Angels in LA, he felt that playing every day in Chicago, that he could have done the same thing. At least he would have liked to have had a shot at doing that. The only time he spent with the Cubs was in 1954. He was a backup to then starting first baseman Dee Fondy. Spent most of his time on the bench, and of course it was the next year, 55, he wound up in LA. So one of Bilko's regrets was that he didn't get a chance to play every day in Chicago with Ernie Banks.
Well, his National League record, Bilko's, that is, you could take a look at that, and I'm just curious, did you to see how he performed in Wrigley? Because he's not only the Dodgers, the Reds.
Well, one of the interesting things about Bilko, and when you write a book, of course, you're looking into all facets of one's career. And in the case of the 56 Angels, I didn't just write about that season. I wrote about the players, what they did prior to that, what happened to them afterwards. And one of the interesting discoveries on Bilko was he hit over 400 off of Hoyt Wilhelm, one of the greatest knuckleball pitchers of all time, and a fellow who most hitters, in fact, the batting average of other players against Hoyt Wilhelm is around 250, one of the lowest of any pitcher who pitched as much as Hoyt.
Okay, so for viewers that are wondering about Hoyt Wilhelm, aside from going to YouTube, I do know that he's a key figure in the 61 movie, so that people can go see that. But you're telling me that Bilko was able to go 400.
Hit 412. 412, hit 2 home runs off of Hoyt Wilhelm. Dean Chance was the one who related Bilko's performance against Hoyt Wilhelm. Dean Chance was in Baltimore when he saw Hoyt Wilhelm's knuckleball for the first time. Dean Chance was just a kid, and he said it was the best pitch he'd ever seen. He couldn't imagine anybody hitting the ball. And that was why when Bilko hit against Hoyt Wilhelm, this is now when he was with the Major League Angels, Chance couldn't believe how well he hit him. He had the kind of swing, he was able to just tee off on Hoyt Wilhelm. So he also teed off on another pretty good pitcher one time at Yankee Stadium in New York. This is 1960. Bilko was playing with the Detroit Tigers. The pitcher was Bobby Shantz.
Wow.
Now, Bobby Shantz won 24 games one season, but one of Bobby Shantz's hanging curveballs wound up in the upper deck where only two or three other ball players hit the ball in the upper deck. That story of hitting the ball in the upper deck was related by Bill Skowron, who was playing for the Yankees at that time, as well as Ryan Duran, who said it went further than any ball he'd ever seen hit at Yankee Stadium.
Wow. Two great, essentially what we would term closers of all time, and Bilko owned them, you're telling me.
He did. And I think the interesting thing when you research a ball player like Bilko, one of the stories why he didn't do better in the majors was that he couldn't handle the really great fastballs. Well, he had trouble against Ryan Duran's fastball, but of course a lot of other people did as well. He certainly could hit a curveball, as evidenced by the Bobby Shantz curveball that he put in the upper deck at Yankee Stadium. He could hit Hoyt Wilhelm's knuckleball. So I don't believe it was a case where Bilko couldn't handle a certain kind of pitch. What I concluded after all my research was that Bilko didn't get a chance to play every day except for one season, and that was his rookie year, 1953, with the St. Louis Cardinals. He hit 21 home runs, 84 RBIs, and batted .251. By today's standards, that might have earned him a Rookie of the Year. Of course, in '53, that got him on the bench for the '54 season and eventually traded to the Cubs.
Wow. We're coming up to the 1 minute mark, and I'm just curious with regards to Louisville Slugger, or what type of bat did he use, and did he stick with the same type of equipment through the course of his career?
A 32-ounce bat, and particularly lightweight bat. He liked to buggy whip the bat around. That's the way it was described. So the cover of the book shows Bilko holding 4 bats. People have sometimes mistaken me for Bilko on the cover, and I say, hey, I can't hold 4 bats.
But you know, this is what amazes me about the book, and I guess you got to, as a kid, you grew up watching this team, and here it is. You put it together for them to pass on their achievements.
The most gratifying part of the book, John, is that 15 of the players are still living, and I'm now part of the 56 Angels family. I'm a member of the family. That makes me feel really good. They've all enjoyed the book. I had one ball player say, "Thank you for treating me with the respect that you did." And that's really what I wanted to do. This was a great team, some outstanding ball players, and I wanted to tell their story in a very respectful and a memorable way.
Well, Gaylon, you certainly did, and I want to thank you for returning to talk more about the Bilko Athletic Club, and hope you come back again.
Pleasure is mine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is John Vorperian saying thank you for sharing this time with us. Wishing you the best, take care, and see you soon. Bye-bye for now.